Hello, welcome back to Ministry.Mom.Medicine. Yes, I changed it from motherhood to medicine because it was always supposed to be mom. So I apologize. No, I don't apologize. I just want to get it correct. Like I stated to you all in my very first episode of being vulnerable, that God had given me ministry mom medicine, not ministry motherhood medicine. So I'm trying to be obedient and get it correct. Okay, so hopefully this is the last change. But again, I try to ensure that I continue to be spirit led when I do things when it comes to this podcast and where God is taking me. Alrighty, so let's redo that. Hello, welcome back to Ministry Mom Medicine. I am your host, Dr. Brittany Taylor, and I am so happy you've been able to join me yet again. Today is my third episode. Hooray! In today's episode, we're going to be discussing the correct way to assess your children. My title today is going to be Stop Assessing Your Children as Baggage and Start Assessing Them as Seeds. I start to look into how I am a single mother and how various times and various moments in my life, people try to play me and try to play my child, okay? To the point where they try to degrade my seed, all right? And so I've been doing some reflection on that, and I want people to understand and evaluate the way that they are evaluating their children, because God has placed children in our lives for a reason. And so I look into the biblical lenses of when God gave someone a promise, especially when it came to the next generation, He would refer to that child. He would refer to that legacy as seeds, okay? And so I'm going to incorporate, of course, biblically through the ministry of what God has given me, the wisdom and knowledge and understanding He has given me and graced me in this season, as well as integrate some of the things that I've learned along the journey of being a single mother, how making sure that I pour into my life, pour into my son's life the correct way. I believe God had given me an epiphany or a revelation back in, I want to say 2020, 2022, to start assessing my child as a seed. And ever since then, it definitely transformed my mind and transformed the way that I raise my son. And so I give a little bit of tidbits throughout this episode, as well as, again, integrating the Word of God. And then I also, as you know, your girl is a psychiatrist, okay? I also integrate some facts psychologically. I know last episode, some psychological facts. I know last episode we discussed adverse childhood experiences, and so I'm not going into that depth this episode. However, I will be kind of dropping a little bit of hints about how that can also play into the role of allowing your child to be assessed as baggage. And so one thing to know you can look into, I'm going to be kind of talking about Cinderella effect. Yes, my video is a little bit different today because I have my notes here on my desk and it's a little bit more comfortable. However, please give me feedback if you like the optics of my other look, and we can definitely go back to the other. But if you like the background now, you like the comfortableness, let's roll together. All right. And so, before I get started into what I'm going to talk about, make sure you are following me on Spotify if you are listening through Spotify, and making sure you comment if you liked the episode. If you didn't like the episode, tell me why before just saying boo and not liking it. And then if you're listening through YouTube, make sure you are subscribing to me and commenting and liking and sharing it. And if you can, go follow me on Instagram, become one of my followers, and so you can see the updates, as well as you can get more of the real short snippets of what I'm discussing. Okay, so let's get into it. So I'm not sure if you all remember the meme somebody had posted on Instagram within the new year. They were like, this girl, she's been having this baggage on since 2014. I'm not sure if you all recall, but like the meme of the young lady, the black girl, she had her dress and heels on, and she has like lots of baggage and lots of like bricks, and she's going to stepping into the new year. And so it was back in 2022 when I saw that, and I was like, people can have multiple children, and each brick is like each brick is like their child, and they're allowing people, even themselves, to assess the children that they have as baggage. And as they're doing that, they feel weighted down. They feel like, this is not some beautiful thing, beautiful journey. They feel like this is disgust. And as they feel this way, they're allowing people, even themselves, society, just throw their children around, not even pouring into them the correct way, because they're not seeing the value of it. When you think of garbage, when you think of trash, this is just something you just throw away. This is something you just you don't value. This is something that you just look at and push it aside. This is not something you invest in. Whereas when you look at seeds, this is something you're going to have to take time and invest in. It's not something that quickly grows. This is not something that quickly gives you the benefit. And I think this is especially important when it comes to being a mother, single mother in societies, that oftentimes you don't yield the benefit of what you're pouring into your child quickly. It usually comes later on. And that's where the sacrifice comes in, and having God on your side to strengthen you every step of the way, because it is an investment. Okay, having a child and raising them correctly is an investment. And so that is why I compare my motherhood journey as a seed, me pouring into the seed that God has blessed me to have. And so, as you have seeds, it requires nutrients. It requires, good soil. It requires water. It requires sun. It requires protection. And that takes effort. That takes a lot of dedication. And that takes time. And I believe each child on earth is worth that time and investment. However, everyone does not have that mental capacity or the energy to do that. And that is why I want to enlighten all believers of Christ. I want to enlighten all mothers to understand the importance of what they're doing, because at the end of the day, you want to see that seed grow. You want to see that seed become the best that it can. And so it may just be that you have to pour in more, in comparison just allowing society to downgrade, to degrade, and take away and scrape away that seed. You have to, as a parent, be that protective factor. And so when I think of, the sunlight, when I think of, the water, that is the parent. I think of the love that I have to give my son. I think of the patience I have to give my son, the kindness that I have to give my son, the firm foundation of Christ as our Savior, as the soil that we put into, as the sun. I believe that Jesus is our light, and He gives us that joy. He gives us that special covering. He gives us that special ability to do more than we could ever think, ask, or imagine. He gives us those gifts. And so I think when you have these different elements and you pour into that seed, it's going to grow. And it grows in its own time and in season. You can think of different stories of people where they say, I didn't know that child was going to come up and be that way because he gave me a hard time from 5 years old to 9 years old. Whatever it may be, when you trust God throughout this process, it can work out. I think of God being, the ultimate gardener. We can think biblically of when it comes to the pruning process of a believer, and how the Lord, our God, is the gardener, and we are connected to the vine, which is the vine, which is Jesus. And so when we are connected to the right things and the right people, as a parent, whether you're single or if you're married, it allows things to become easier for us. And so I recommend, as we talk throughout this episode, you understand the depiction that I'm trying to paint for you is that we need to start assessing children, whether in our church, whether in our home, whether in our communities, as seeds, okay? And when you start looking at them as seeds, you start to find the benefit and value of them, and you start to want to pour into them correctly, okay? But because I recall when I stayed in public housing, or what they call projects. But when I stayed out there, when we stayed out there, I think about how a man was driving, and it was lots of kids just outside playing, right? And as they were outside playing, the man was driving, and he just yelled, "Bad A kids." The kids weren't doing anything except playing. Why is it that this young man felt like it was necessary to call kids that just because they we stay out in public housing or the projects, okay? That's not okay. Society oftentimes tries to downgrade, downplay, judge, discriminate, disenfranchise those who are underserved, those who are poor, those who are Black and brown or minorities. And so we have to be we have to stand up for our children in the next generation. Because in that moment, I was like, what did these children, I was kind of more of an adult at that time, but I was like, what did these kids do to deserve that? You know what I mean? And so what happens is children start to become a product of their environment. Okay. And so I don't know what turned out for those kids, but what I'm telling you is I'm so thankful that I had God on my side and I had parents who believe in God, because if not, I could have decided that I was not going to make change for where I could go. I could go on and on about, my life story, go on and on about things that I had opposition, but yet I still, became successful because I just believe in what people told me that I could do. But unfortunately, sometimes people, like I said, those children had no reason to be called that. They weren't doing anything except playing. You get what I mean? And so it's definitely upsetting for me because I'm like, what is going on with society where you think you can just judge someone, judge a book by its cover? And oftentimes, as a single mother, single black mother, I get that all the time. And that's where I get what we call a lot of stigma, okay? I have experienced stigma from being on the professional environment. I have experienced stigma just socially, rather just going out, the judgment. People don't know that I'm actually a doctor because I have my son with me, and they just assume a lot of assumption, and I have experienced multifaceted stigma. And so that's why I want to talk about it today, because despite the stigma, I pour into my son as if we are wealthy, as if we are kings and queens, because my Father in heaven says that I am, and says that this child that I have is valuable. Okay? And so I want to convince you to do that very exact thing, despite what society may say, despite what your own personal stigma that you put in yourself, back to those core beliefs, or cognitive distortions, that needs to be challenged. Okay? So let's get into it. This past weekend was really great for Zion and I because he was honored as Star Student of the Month. Star Student, it was some star honor thing that he was awarded through a university and through his school collaborating on that. So he was able to go to a basketball game and be recognized, get a certificate. And he was so excited. I may drop a video in so you can see some things that he shared. But I say that because in that moment when I was notified that he was, being recognized as one of the star students because of his academic excellence and his great character, I praised God, of course, and I did like a lot of reflection because I ensure that I protect, I ensure that I provide, I ensure that I pray for my child. Because like I said, he is my seed. He is my seed that God has given me. And in that moment, I definitely had to thank him for rewarding him because Zion has been very successful since I started residency. I don't brag about my kid because I think I'm just very private, but he has made all A's every step of the way, been above average nationally when it comes to his test scores for state. He has, won spelling bees. He's a really great child, and I'm very thankful for him. Are there, hard days sometimes? Sure. Yes. I wouldn't be lying if I didn't say that. If I'm having to still mold him to have the right character, have the right attitude, yes. But overall, when I say despite the opposition he faces and I have faced, he yet rises to the occasion. And I think it's because of my perspective change to noting that he is my seed and this is my responsibility, and I'm okay doing whatever sacrifice I have to do in this season because I know eventually it's not going to always be this hard, and I know that in my sacrificing that I'm doing for him, it's going to be a lot easier for him. So I don't mind staying up late after working hard to make sure he understands a school lesson. I don't mind taking off of work to make sure I'm there present for a play. I don't mind making sure that I X out on, fast food to cook him a healthier meal. It's worth it. And I encourage every mother watching this, every parent watching this, especially my single mothers out there, the sacrifices you're making for your child is worth it. Do not let up just because society is trying to devalue you or your child. The more you pour into that seed, the better it has a chance of thriving. It does not matter if the concrete is around your seed. It will rise above based off the love, the time, the patience, and the sacrifice you put into them. It's worth it, okay? And so, first thing we're going to do, you all know we get into the word on this podcast. So, we're going to first dive into the word this time. Sometimes I do the word at the end, but we're going to start with the word because the word is the firm foundation when it comes to building up those seeds. Okay? And so let's go to Genesis, the 12th chapter, and the 7th verse. So we all know the song, Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. Okay, let's just stop. But we know that Father Abraham received the promise from God that he was going to birth a nation. And it took time for that to happen, but Abraham trusted that and had faith that it was going to happen, okay? And so you see in Genesis, the 12th chapter, 7th verse, it says, And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto the Lord who appeared unto him. And so he first used seed. You get what I mean? God first said seed. God didn't say baggage. God did not say trash. God did not say child. He said seed, because you have to understand, a seed is something that can multiply. A seed is something that can continue to grow and develop. A seed is something that has the legacy attached to it. And so I wanted you all to see that, yes, this did occur, because we know in breaking down Abraham, he did have Ishmael. Okay, we know how that happened throughout, not waiting. But through Sarah, he did give birth to Isaac. And then from Isaac with Rebekah gave birth to Jacob and Esau. And then from there, Jacob gave birth, we all know how that broke down as well, with Rachel and what is the other it was Rachel and Leah, yes, and then also some of the handmaids through them. So, but he gave birth, and he had more children, and we gave birth to the Israelites, because Jacob's name changed to Israel, and so through that lineage, we were able to have David through the lineage of Judah, and then through David, more and more, Jesus. Okay, and so why do I break it down this way? Because the Lord gave Abraham that promise, and through time and generation after generations, it did occur. But imagine if people stopped taking care of their seed. Imagine if they decided to just cut that seed off. Imagine what would have taken place. Of course, God would not have allowed that to happen. But I want you to understand the importance of when God gives you a seed. It is up to you to foster and develop and nurture that seed. You may say, well, God has given me these seeds, Dr. Taylor, and I don't know how I'm supposed to take care of them. Give them back to him. What I mean by that is, pray back to God to help you take care of those seeds he has graced you with, despite some of the hard circumstances you may be experiencing. Ask him to help supply your every need according to his riches and glory. Ask him to do exceedingly abundantly above all you can ever think, ask, or imagine, according to the power that worketh in you. Ask him to do that for you, because he can, okay? I think sometimes society people get it twisted. I think they think that because you are a single mother, you should just be struggling. And I'm like, is this the same guy you say who gave me this seed that you're saying now also wants me to struggle and be punished forever? Once I have asked God to forgive me for my sins, forgive me for my disobedience, he comes back in, he restores me, and he is doing just that. And as he has restored me and freed me, he can do the exact same thing for you. Do not allow society, and sometimes it's not even society, sometimes it can be the church. The church can cause shame and stigma. I'm very thankful for the church that I was raised in and my parents. They did not allow me to wallow in shame. Did I have hard times sometimes? Sure enough, I did. But the way my church family poured into me, they showed up for me in my baby shower before friends or family did. It was definitely the church that helped me stay firm in my faith. Yes, I had hard times still. Sometimes I still had challenging and rocky faith, and expect that to happen sometimes. Because if you're not challenged, if you're not experiencing some troubling times, how is your faith going to be strengthened? Okay. And so again, I welcome prayer. Like I tell people who follow me on Instagram, hey, we can pray. We can pray. Hey, Dr. Taylor will go into prayer if you want me to go in prayer with you. And so that is why I want you to understand where the seed kind of started. And then as you'll see, and we'll go next to, you also confirm that in 2 Samuel, the 7th chapter, the 12th verse, okay? And that says, and when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed, and after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. Okay, so this is again is reiterating how the kingdom is going to be established, and how the kingdom is connected to God bringing about Abraham. Continue to foster more seeds and more lineage, and so much seeds that you can't even count, is as numerous as the stars and as the sand. Like he couldn't count it. And so this is coming about from David as well, connected to Abraham and then Jesus. And so that is how the kingdom is going to be established. And that kingdom is so big that we know Jesus is now in heaven with the Father, but the all powerful came through the lineage of David, through the lineage of Abraham. So it's amazing there. And that's why I take it so serious, because when I die, I want my legacy to continue on. And I don't want it to be, my mom did this and that. Now, am I a perfect mom? No. I know my son gonna still have something to say, okay? But I want it to be like, I've poured the sacrifice and I'm trying to establish as much as I can right now, so that it can be easier for my child, my children, and for the next and next and next generation. Beautiful. And so I want to go into what King David said, and this is one that has stuck with me for a very long time. When I had hard times, hard seasons, this is what I put my trust into, because I know if God called me to, if I know God told me to do, if I know God shifted my perspective on the way to raise my child, I know it's going to be all right. You get what I mean? And so this is just encouragement. Like I tell you all, that my podcast is a podcast connected to faith, so if you're like, I just wanted to talk about psychiatry, I just want this to be about, learning about mental illness and diagnosis. Well, this podcast may not be for you, because if it had not been for God, where would I be? Literally. So let's go to Psalms, the 37th chapter, 25th through the 26th verse. We know this one. It says, I have been young and now I am old, and I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging for bread. Let's say it from the top again. I have been young and now am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. He is ever merciful and lendeth, and his seed is blessed. That feels good, doesn't it? You see, King David recognized that his seed, through God blessing him, his seed was going to be blessed as well. And yes, no matter how much he was going through, he was going to be all right, because God was with him. He will never forsake his people, never forsake his promises. He wouldn't do that. Psalm 37, I recommend anybody who's experiencing any type of challenges or hardship, especially when they're having attacks. Come on. It's one that will bless you, encourage you, know that the enemy will be cut off. The people who are challenging you, and I especially say that for single mothers out there who have any type of opposition when it comes to people not helping out, if it comes to people, talking about you, if it comes to people judging you, and you're doing the best that you can, you are showing up daily, read Psalms 37. It definitely encourages you, because at the end of the day, when you are obedient to God, He sees you, He values you, and He will move mountains for you. Only a matter of time. So do not grow weary in well doing, because in due season you will reap a harvest if you faint not. No, He got you. Okay? Amen. And so, as I was explaining to you, that it's important for you to understand that, let's look at it as the imagery of a garden. If your soil is dry, if you're not putting in water, if you're not putting in enough sun, if you're not putting in enough oxygen, if you're not putting in enough, nutrients, it's not going to grow. And so sometimes, in order for you to ensure that the child has a good environment, is healthy, able to grow and thrive, you have to make sure you are healthy inside first. It's hard to pour from an empty cup. It's hard to give someone love. It's hard to give someone value and attention when you are exhausted and you have not even checked in with yourself. It is hard to do that. So I always recommend people to get their own healing, to get their own replenishment, to get restored for themselves first. I remember giving a mini word at my dad's church, and I was talking about how are you going to survive, a plane that is going through troubles in the sky and they're needing you to put on your oxygen mask. And the first thing they tell you is to put your oxygen mask on first before putting on your child. Because when you're trying to put on oxygen and its O2 levels is low on the plane, and you're trying to put it onto your child first, and doing that, you are losing your oxygen still, and you're trying to put on them. And what can happen is both the child and you lose it. So you have to first put the oxygen on yourself first. So you are supplied. Now you have enough energy and strength to put it onto your child. Okay? Because if not, both of you all fail. You get what I'm saying? And I think a lot of times, as a young single mother, I first became a mother at age 19. And so when you are young, sometimes you don't realize the correct way of raising a child sometimes. And so you first have to figure out that way pretty fast. But the younger you are, the harder it is sometimes to do it correctly because you're still trying to develop and learn things yourself. And I definitely recommend, leaning to God to help you with that, reading books, getting linked up with a therapist to learn those tools, getting linked up with a support group. Do the things necessary for you to know how to take care of you so you can take care of your children. Because if not, it becomes back to that repetitious cycle that you don't deserve, your children do not deserve, and generations are waiting to be changed. Generations are waiting to be shifted based off what you do right now. Prioritize your mental health, prioritize your physical health, prioritize your spiritual health in this season, okay? Because as you see, I've learned, as I started loving me better, oh my goodness, the way that I love my son better, the way I see my son better, the way I see myself better, it's beautiful. So I know you all, I know it can happen for anyone, okay? And this even goes beyond parenting. This just can boil down to just relationships, period. Any type of relationship you're in or desiring, first start with loving you, and then you can give love to other people. Amen. And then I think about when I think about this analogy of seeds, your child should be assessed as a seed. I think about how there are parents out there with multiple children, and that means multiple seeds. I feel like sometimes in society they want you to say that your value goes down because you have a child. And I don't agree with that. Why is it that your value goes down when you have a child, but if you assess it as seeds, the value should go up because you're supposed to be producing things that's going to grow and develop and be great. You're producing things that is going to be change makers. And so if you are raising your child correctly, you're loving them correctly, and you're actually addressing them, assessing them as a seed, that means your value should go up. Okay, because you're doing it correct. And this is going to be something that not just transform your child, can not really supposed to transform your life, but do some type of shift making in the earth, shift making in the ministry of God, just something, you know what I mean? Purposeful. However, I understand a little bit why society tries to do that. Because if you're not actually taking care of the seed and you just have seeds around dry ground and they're not reproducing anything, that does start to become a weight. That starts to be just taking up space. And so it's important for you to understand the more children you have, the more responsibility you have, the more covering you have to do, the more work you have to do. And I'm not downplaying, I'm not trying to downgrade, I'm not trying to shame anyone. But I want you to understand you have to take that time to invest, okay? God can help you along the way. Support and environment can help along the way, but you have to understand the more children you have, the more you have to pour into them, because if not, you can be spread out, and what happens is you try to pour your little bit of cup of water on each one of those children, and maybe one thrives and others don't. And unfortunately, it's because you couldn't give them all that they deserve and need. And that's what happens. I'll say take your time when it comes to having children. And sometimes, it's hard. Sometimes you get lost in the sauce. I get it. but do what you can to focus on what you already have in front of you. Because if not, it becomes a point where you are more of a risk of having a hostile environment for your child that they're not able to thrive. And it's hard to protect and cover all those seeds, especially as a single mother. Okay, but when you have that unit, which I call that greenhouse, that covering through a man of God, or the covering through God, all things, all things are possible through God, okay? But I think the more children you have, the more support you really do need, okay? Having my one son, it's hard on its own. So I definitely feel, and I pray for those who have 5 or 6 different children, and they're trying to handle that by themselves. It can be done, but just make sure you are definitely invested in the time and watching your children and pouring into your children, because it's difficult. It's difficult because each child requires its own needs. Okay, each child requires a mouth to feed. Each child requires attention and love. And having one person trying to handle it all, that's difficult for sure. So definitely in prayer for those people out there who are doing it by themselves and have lots of seeds. And again, I'm going to continue to refer to the children as seeds, because I believe all children are seeds. And if we take care of them that way, they can reproduce in any type of environment despite the limitation that may have occurred. Like Tupac Shakur said, did you hear about the rose that grew from the concrete? So no matter what, it can happen. All children can be successful through all adversity. But definitely just make sure, if you are a parent, protect your children. Okay. And so yeah, back to kind of that. I'm kind of going everywhere today, huh? So back to when it comes to the greenhouse, the covering, I believe God is definitely the top gardener and the covering for families. Okay. I think about the analogy that they have, like God, husband, wife, children. Perfect. Okay. However, for some families like me and my son, our covering is God in this season. However, if you are married and you have children, the husband is the covering, and that is very healthy for sure. A husband that is through the faith of God, of course, believing in God and going submissive to Him, it definitely helps the children continue to be raised healthy and have a good environment, good soil to thrive in. And it brings me kind of to a topic that sometimes I didn't realize it was there until like recently, something called Cinderella effect. And through the Cinderella effect, it's through kind of like a psychological term where it was things that psychologists noticed that when it came to different studies, that children who were raised in a environment with a step parent, they had increased risk of actually being abused. And there's different theories about why this may occur. They call it the Cinderella effect because, as you all are aware of how Cinderella's story, she was mistreated by her stepmom and her stepsisters, and she didn't get fair treatment. And so the Cinderella effect has different theories about why that happens, why it doesn't happen, how it can be addressed. I really won't get into that today, but I will put in the different studies on my links that you can go to and review if you want to learn more. But what I want you to understand is that one particular study, I will note which one it is in the podcast at the bottom, but they were stating that it was a Canadian study about 40 children who are raised in household with step parents, that they were at increased risk in comparison to those raised by biological parents. Both biological parents in the home, they're at increased risk of having mistreatment, abuse, or maltreatment or neglect in comparison to those who are raised by their biological parents. And so I bring this up to say, make sure, if you are a single mother, make sure if you are mating, you're dating, make sure you are talking to your children, making sure that they're okay. And not just that, make sure you are choosing your partners wisely, okay? Because I know everyone wants to be loved out here, but make sure that they are okay. Make sure that they are actually going to love your child the way they deserve to be loved. Because you can do all the work trying to love them and nurture them, protect them, cover them, and help them grow in the environment by trying to treat them as seed, but you incorporate someone who cannot do that, who will not do that, who doesn't understand, who doesn't value your seed, all that can go to waste. And so I ask that you pray to God to give you discernment about the true intentions of people who are coming around your child, okay? This goes back to what I discussed at our last episode, adverse childhood experiences, and how that can play into the mental and physical health of adulthood, okay? Take your time. Seek God when it comes to partners. Do not be in a rush. Love yourself first. And as you love yourself first, then love your children correctly. Make sure your children are okay before you invite someone in your home. Do not allow anyone and everyone to be around your child, okay? Friends, family, if you do not know the true intent or their character, do not leave your child with anyone and everyone. You're like, Dr. Taylor, you just got so serious. This is very serious. Protect your seed. Nurture your seed. Help your seed thrive as much as they can. And you can say, well, I'm young. I got to go out. Okay. You do not want your child you do not want to look back and your child is grown and you regret going out that one night because things happen to your child. And I'm not saying you don't have a great environment. I'm not saying things will happen. What I'm telling you is make sure that you are sure about who you're leaving your child with. Make sure that you have invested time to know who the person is who's coming around, who you feel like is a potential partner for you, okay? Because it's just studies are showing this, and I agree with these studies. It's even in America, people can see that. I was trying to find the exact statistic for that in United States, but I was not able to see that. But just pay attention to it, okay? I've noticed that some parents are definitely just waiting until their children are able to speak before involving people so they can express how a person makes them feel when around them. I even recommend people doing background checks. And so at the end of the day, just trust God, ask Him to give you the spirit of discernment, make sure you're investigating, because it's just terrible to do all the work to make sure that the environment is set and then allow someone to come in who destroys that environment. Can things go back? Can you restore things? Children are resilient. Yes, you are resilient. But just understand, if you do things in the forefront, be more proactive, you have the ability to be less reactive to things. Children can thrive. Children have the ability to be resilient. Children have the ability to rise. Seeds have the ability to continue to grow despite sometimes having harsh environments, but you want to make it easier by giving them everything they need in that environment. You don't want to be the cause of that environment being disastrous or hostile at all, but children can rise to the occasion. We've seen it multiple times. I've experienced resiliency through all of my experiences in my life. So it's definitely possible. But if you have an option to be more hands-on, be more present, do that. Like I said, it's better to go ahead and be more active now in childhood than wait until adulthood and having to be apologetic. And grace definitely is necessary for all seasons in our life. Because as you nurture and protect your child better, they have a better chance. Simply put. So do not allow people to assess your child as baggage. They need to assess your child as a seed and pour into them. When people assess your child, especially when it comes to partnerships, relationships, businesses, even friendships, people try, as a single parent, people try to assess your children as baggage. Okay? When they are doing that as if there's no value, who cares? You don't need to put time with them. You don't got to hang out with them, hang out with me every day. You don't have to spend money on them, give money to me. Blah, blah. Pause on that. That's not the right way to do it. Now I'm going to say period. Period. And so now I want to read another scripture before we kind of close out on today's episode. And this is from Galatians 5:7. And we're going to go from the amplified version. Okay. And it says, do not be deceived. God is not mocked, meaning He will not allow Himself to be ridiculed, nor treated with contempt, nor allow His precepts to be scornfully set aside. For whatever a man sows, this and this only is what he will reap. Think of it as this. What you sow in your children, you will reap. You take that as you receive it. If you sow good things into your kid, good things will come out. Do it come out immediately? So for some kids, it can come out immediately. Maybe later down the road it comes out. But if you sow bad seeds, bad things into your child, you will reap bad things through your child. It's just the way it happens. One scripture talks about do not provoke your children. Yes, the children are supposed to be obedient to you, but do not provoke your children. And I get there, my tone shifts sometimes because we have to understand sometimes children are very malleable. Children are very vulnerable. Children are very dependable. Adults are supposed to be responsible and be adults. Children are not supposed to be the adults in the family. So to put responsibility for them to make things happen and shake things up and provide, it's not mature. Allow children the space to grow and learn so they can thrive, so they can thrive in adulthood. And so in that verse though, Apostle Paul was discussing that to the church at that time about how it's important to make the right choices. And when they make the right choices of not sowing into their flesh, but instead sowing into their spirit, they will reap good results. The ultimate result of a believer is to reap the benefit of eternal salvation, eternal life in heaven. But when you sow things through your flesh, you will reap not the benefit, but the harm and the end result of condemnation. Well, not condemnation, but not eternal life. Death. The sin equals death. And so at the end of the day, he compares it to you have a choice, like the choice is like seeds. And the result of your action is the crop that is harvested or not harvested. When the crop doesn't rise, based off what you have sowed. The crop rises based off what you have sowed. You reap what you sow. Alrighty, well, that is all for today, folks, in my Bugs Bunny voice. Today we've learned about the importance of assessing your children as seeds, okay? Not baggage. Baggage is meant to be thrown away, meant to be discarded, meant to be stepped all over, meant to be put in the trash. You're probably like, well, Dr. I have some really good luggage and really good baggage. No, I'm talking about the baggage that is old. I'm talking about the baggage that you just got done grocery shopping and you just ball it up and you put it in the trash. I'm talking about the old stuff, not valuable at all. You know what I mean? But you should start assessing your children that's in your community, in your home, at your school, at your church, as seeds, so that you can continue to nurture them and help them to grow and be who God has called them to be. This is beautiful, my podcast family. And so I just want to say thank you for joining me on my third episode of Stop Assessing Your Children as Baggage and Start Assessing Them as Seeds. Remember to follow me. Remember to comment. Remember to subscribe on YouTube. Share with someone. And give me any advice if you feel like you have some advice for me on this podcast or anything you want me to talk about. And definitely message me on Instagram if you need any prayer or advice about something. I say that now because I don't have a lot of followers. But when your girl get a lot of followers, I may not be able to respond as fast. So take advantage of the time that I have now. Alrighty, so thank you for joining me on Ministry.Mom.Medicine. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.